Today we're finally looking at Raptor Lake, the 13th gen from Intel. It's been a while this has been out, but prices have finally dropped enough to convince me to blow all my money on this, and I've done absolutely tons of testing this week. So we've got the Alder Lake chip from last year, the 12700KF, we've got the 5800X3D, and we've got the new 13700KF, and we're going to pop them all together, test them. I've tested them absolutely loads, and we're going to show you which of these comes out on top, because this is more interesting than I thought it would be actually, and I've changed up some of my testing to hopefully show some things going into the future. So let's get into it. The first thing I need to talk about is how I've tested these. These have been tested with DDR4, and when I did testing with DDR4 and DDR5 with the Alder Lake chip last year, we found that DDR5 will bring a performance improvement. So bear that in mind. These aren't necessarily the full potential of these chips, the Intel ones at least. If you pop DDR5 in with them, especially now that DDR5 is getting faster and faster all the time and coming down in price, there will be a few more frames to be had from DDR5. But I sold that motherboard after I did that testing, and I'm not going to go out and buy another motherboard for the Intel chip. So that's why that's there. It's all been done at 1080p, and most of you watching this, I'm sure, will be aware that when you're testing CPUs, you want to remove the GPU bottleneck as much as physically possible, and so you tested the lower resolution. But still, as you'll see in some of the tests, we did run into a GPU bottleneck on one occasion. The first thing we need to talk about is the E-cores. We'll start off here with some testing in Laurelville. Again, I've done absolutely tons of testing, loads and loads of runs with all of these, way over 100. The testing took about 3 days to do all this, so yes, please like and subscribe if you like this sort of stuff. You'll see with the E-cores that, again, and we've seen this in the past, you want to turn the E-cores off, even on Windows 11 that I'm on here now. In the past when I tested this, it wasn't this bad, but actually now, you just need the E-cores off to play Star Citizen. And Star Citizen themselves, CIG, have actually mentioned that they will be looking into this, or I think they are looking into this already, to why the game doesn't work with the E-cores. Because in theory, the game or Windows should be able to basically filter out the E-cores and just use the P-cores, the performance cores. But for some reason, as the game is right now, you just want to turn the E-cores off if you've got one of these Intel chips. And so with the E-cores off, let's put it head to head versus the Alder Lake chip, the 12700KF, and the Ryzen 5800X3D. And you'll see here that they're actually all pretty close, closer than I thought. The 5800X3D, as we kind of would expect with all its massive cache, the level 3 cache, is out in front. But it's not far ahead of the other two. And actually, again, if you were to get DDR5 instead of DDR4, I think you'd be pretty close. And so it seems as though over the last year or so since I tested the 12700KF, whether it's a combination of BIOSes or the game itself, we're on a different patch, drivers, all sorts of stuff, it seems as though Intel are closer to AMD, or at least AMD's best AM4 processor, than we thought. This isn't always the case, and there's one really interesting result that we'll get to in a minute. But all of these are good results. What's slightly disappointing maybe is that the 13700KF isn't really very far at all in front of the 12700KF. And so there's one of the things I was thinking coming into this was, one of the questions was, would this be worth the upgrade if you've already got an Alder Lake chip? And based on this, maybe not, but let's keep going. Next up, Area 18, and I've changed my testing. In the past, I've just tested a static scene looking at the globe, but I wanted to get a run in so I can repeat it, and going forward into 318, I want more comparison between 317.4, which this is all tested on, and 318, so that's why I've done that. And so it starts in the hub, it goes through to the shuttle area, and you'll see here with the results that we have again a victory, a bit more of a victory actually, for the 5800X3D. Again, the level 3 cache in that seems to really help in most areas of Star Citizen, but again there'll be one where that isn't the case. But you'll see again a very small increase between Alder Lake, the 12th gen, and Raptor Lake, the 13th gen. Even though the Raptor Lake 13th gen chip has got a bit more cache actually, and also it should clock faster, it doesn't seem to result in much better performance in Star Citizen. So that's an interesting one. Let's move over to Horizon. We're on the rooftop looking out over the clouds. This is normally a scene I use for GPU testing, for lower end GPUs especially, but in this case we're not GPU bound. This is all still the CPU with the 3080, and you'll see a stepping basically between these three CPUs. Actually a bit more of an improvement for the 13700KF, and again AMD are out in front on this one. Now we've got a new scene that I'm testing. We're still in Horizon, but we've dropped down below to the city, and this is a very intensive scene for the render thread. So CIG are working on the render thread, they're working on the Gen 12 renderer, and they are hoping to bring performance improvements with 3.18. So this testing really is to start a comparison between 3.17.4 now and then with 3.18 with the render thread improvements. So hopefully that will be interesting, but it actually is quite interesting for the testing that we're doing here, because you'll see here that both the Intel chips are ahead of the 5800X3D, and this was repeatable. And it seems to me as though certain scenes the 5800X3D can really plow through with the extra cache, but it looks to me here as though this scene particularly is being helped by maybe the clock speed of the Intel chips. They clock a lot higher than the 5800X3D. Something is happening here which means the Intel chips are ahead, which is interesting. Let's jump over to quantum travel. You'll see here that actually we've got two CPUs that are the same, and that's because they are GPU bottlenecked. The 12700KF can't quite meet that bottleneck, so it's still CPU bottlenecked. And so actually this is probably the best improvement between the 13700KF and the 12700KF. But whether that would be worth the upgrade if you've got an Alder Lake chip already for this sort of scene, I don't really think so. And we'll finish off with space, and this one really lets the 5800X3D spread its L3 wings, or whatever you want to call it. The cache seems to really help again in this scene. You'll see again a jump between the 12700KF and the 13700KF, so again that's good if you're looking to upgrade. But yeah, this sort of out there, nothing really going on sort of scenario really lets the AMD CPU fly. So what to make of all this? Well, I think it's interesting that on one hand, this is a really impressive CPU. It's close, and it would be even closer with DDR5 RAM to the 5800X3D. The thing that's not particularly convincing about it is that it just doesn't seem to be that big an improvement over the last gen, the 12th gen and the Alder Lake CPUs. I was expecting more, and normally when you jump, you're looking for like a 10% improvement, and we don't get that in a lot of the parts of the game. So I definitely don't think I'd be recommending anybody who's got an Alder Lake CPU to just go out there and buy a Raptor Lake one for more performance, because there's not much in many parts of the games to be found. But if you're building a new system, it is a viable option. It really is close to the 5800X3D. And again, go and do some research into other games because not many people are playing Star Citizen as their only game, because there's lots of games where the new Raptor Lake CPUs will beat AMD's 5800X3D. So yeah, do your research what you're buying it for. But for Star Citizen itself, we've got to still say that the 5800X3D is out in front as the best option. It's not necessarily what I'd recommend people buy though. I've been saying for a while now, because you've now got a new platform from AMD, you've got AM5, you've got these things. I've actually got one. Finally, I've got one. The Ryzen 7 7700X. And so we are getting to the point where that might be a better long-term buy. The problem with Intel, this is the end of the line for these motherboards. The whatever I've got, 6900Z is it? I don't know what they're called. That is going to be useless now. There's no long-term upgrade path. You're basically stuck with these Alder Lake and Raptor Lake CPUs. Whereas with the AMD AM5 platform, we're now at the start of that. We've now got the 7000 series on that. That's the equivalent of the 1000 series on the AM4 motherboards. And again, the difference between the 1000 series Ryzen chips versus the 5000 or the 5800X3D, all on the same motherboards, it's huge. And so if AMD does something similar to that again, where they support those motherboards for a while and multiple generations more than Intel will, which we think they will, it just looks like a much better long-term buy. I've obviously got the CPU, and I still need to pick up a motherboard, and I need to buy again now some more DDR5, but I will be doing a look at and review and doing benchmarks for the new 70, how do you even say that? 7700 or 7700X. Wait for that one. I think that will be interesting, because my theory at this point is that won't perform as well as the 5800X3D. That's my genuine thought on it. I just don't see how it will without the crazy cache. But AMD are going to drop 3D V cache models of their 7000 series. There's rumours maybe as early as January, so really quite soon. So it's a tricky time to buy a CPU at this point. In some ways, I would say hold off. But to move it back to this video, these Raptor Lake CPUs are good. You do have to be careful in terms of some of the lower end models are not actually Raptor Lake. I think they're still Alder Lake. I'll try and put something on the screen that makes that clear. But anyway, go and do some research into that. That's probably enough of this one. If you like this more technical look at Star Citizen, subscribe. You can become a member, which is very handy, and thank you always to the members. Like this video and come and join the Discord, where there's lots of people who are very helpful and can discuss all your Star Citizen PC needs. So that'll do. See you soon. Bye.